Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. Thank you for all joining us today. We really are looking forward to having a very lively discussion this evening. A few things. First, I'm Dr. Eric First. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer and co-founder of a company called Reset. And I have two guests with us tonight that I'll introduce shortly. Before I get started, a lot of you were, I think, hoping to see Barclay this evening. Unfortunately, just a few hours ago, we found out she had a family emergency and unfortunately can't be here tonight. So our thoughts are with her, and to all her fans out there that might be tuned in tonight, please reach out to her through her various different channels, and send her a note that you're thinking of her. That would be awesome. So tonight, really the topic, the first of this webinar series, is about stress and different ways that you can really manage that stress, and in particular, how stress can really impact the immune system. And of course, that's top of mind of everybody these days. Given what's going on, we want to make sure that we all, have the defenses that we can need to really, manage through this. So without further ado, let me introduce our two guests. First of all, we have Dr. Amelia Aldao. She is a licensed psychologist. She specializes in stress and anxiety disorders. She's the founder of a company called Together, CBT, which is an evidence-based, action-driven cognitive behavioral therapy practice or clinic for anxiety and stress in New York City. As well, she was also the director of psychopathology and affective sciences lab at the Ohio State University, where she's been very active in publishing over 60 articles and continues to publish today. She is now a visiting scholar at Columbia University and in the psychiatry faculty at Mount Sinai Hospital, where she teaches cognitive behavioral therapy to PhD students in clinical psychology and psychiatry residents, respectively. She is also a member of Reset Scientific Advisory Board. So welcome, Dr. Aldao, for joining us. Certainly, she knows her stuff. So on the other side here, we have Dr. Michelle McCoy Barrett, who is a licensed psychologist in New Jersey and California. And she has worked as an associate professor of psychology and served as department chair and director of the psych program at the College of St. Elizabeth's here in Morristown, New Jersey. And for the past 14 years, she has been a frequent presenter on a wide variety of topics for professionals, parents, schools, and agencies. And her areas of expertise include understanding, treating stress and anxiety, child and adolescent development, engaging parents in educational settings, and also burnout in the workplace, overparenting, and mindfulness. So between the two of you, oh boy, we're gonna have an active discussion. This should be great. So I think to kick it off, Michelle is a master at a number of different techniques, behavioral techniques that we at Reset, we really take kind of what we call a three-dimensional approach to helping people master their stress. One of them includes cognitive techniques, really understanding from a mindset point of view, what stress is, what stress isn't, and what you can do to really manage that. And then on the behavioral side too, different tips and techniques that can really help you overcome either acute stress situations or even chronic stress. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to lead everybody in a breathing exercise to center us all.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. So, we're going to be talking about stress this evening, this afternoon. So, I thought what we might do is take a few moments and just center ourselves, ground ourselves, and practice a breathing exercise and just sort of get in touch a little bit of where we are right now. So let's start by taking a deep breath. We're going to inhale for a count of 3 and then deeply exhale. So through our nose, through a count of 3. And now exhale. I like to exhale through the mouth. So let's try again. Inhale for 3. Exhale. Maybe just allow your eyes to close if you'd like. Take another deep breath on your own. Inhale and exhale. Just take a moment to think about how you're feeling right now. If there's an emotion that comes to mind, if there's a feeling that comes to mind, just pay attention to it, no judgment. Just sort of get in tune of how you're feeling at this moment. In addition, just pay attention to your body for a moment. Are you holding stress in any part of your body? Your shoulders, your back, your arms, your legs. You just take a moment to pay attention to your breathing. Relax for a moment. And let's take another deep breath together. Inhale and exhale. If you close your eyes, just allow them to open and be present and open to the information that you'll receive today, and just be patient and kind to yourself about whatever you're feeling, wherever you are, wherever you just came from. Try and be here and be open to the information. So let's get started.
Awesome, awesome. I'd like to let everybody know too, out in the audience, we have really real top experts here tonight. So this is an opportunity to submit questions using the Q&A function down below. As those come in, we can field those questions. If we can't get to them, which would be great that everybody is so interested that we get a ton of questions, we'll either reply to you either personally and collectively on our website, where we do have additional information, as well as a blog that we're also, all 3 of us, as well as a couple of our other scientific ad board folks, will be posting very relevant content. So with that, again, if you have questions, feel free to submit them. And the real surprise here, I guess, is that at the end of the show, those that submit those awesome questions also will get a free month's supply of our nutritional supplement, which we'll talk about in the context of our 3-dimensional support a little later. But nevertheless, submit those questions and we'll get started. So the first question, actually, Amelia, to you would be, how should someone work through such a sudden major interruption, which we've all experienced? And really, what have you been writing about that can really help people cope with the stress that they're dealing with today?
Yeah, so this is a very unique, goes without saying, right? It's a very unique situation that we're going through, because most of the time, whenever there's a traumatic event or a crisis, it affects, sort of by definition, a small set of the population, right? And right now at least at a very macro level, right, this is affecting all of us. Obviously in many different ways, right? For some it's a matter of life and death. For us it's about, keeping our family members safe. For us it's about facing unemployment and other issues. So, obviously there's a lot of different ways in which it's affecting all of us. But unlike many other situations that we've been through, and probably like most of our lifetimes, this is sort of affecting everybody, not just everybody in the States, everybody in the world, right? So there's not a real clear blueprint, right, of what to do and how to deal with the disruption. So there's a few things to keep in mind. The first one is what I just said. It's really sort of reminding ourselves that what we're going through is completely unprecedented. This is something that none of us, I venture saying it, have experienced in our lifetimes, in no way to this magnitude. So sort of bringing that reframing in gaining a sense of self-compassion from that, and sort of being able to cut ourselves some slack for all the emotions that we're having and the struggles that we're facing, I think is sort of like really, really important at that sort of macro level. And then the other part that I think is really important is just to remind ourselves, that each of us needs to find what works best for us. And obviously we'll share some tips and techniques, and you guys can also talk to people in your life. You can maybe even talk to a therapist or other type of mental health worker. But the reality is that we need to find what works. And what I've been getting really frustrated is when I'm out there and I'm reading all these articles that come out, that tell people that they, this is the time to pick up all those hobbies and to learn a new language and to build, an indoor playground for your kids and to become this, like, get in the best shape of your life. And there's a lot of pressure left and right, and have all these Zoom meetings with every person that you ever met, and college friends that you haven't seen in 15 years. And I think that it's learning about what works for you. There's a lot of prescriptive messaging out there as to what we need to do and not do. And self-care in general, not even just in the middle of a pandemic, is really about figuring out what works for you. And the way that I like to think about it is, what are activities in your life that allow you to sort of decompress, so they allow you to gain some distance. They allow you to connect to yourself, with your emotions, with your thoughts, with your perspectives, and also in a way that is healthy, right? So, if you go and have 2 bottles of wine, you might, decompress and disengage from the world, but it may not necessarily be healthy, right? Or a couple of glasses of wine might be healthy for most people, but maybe not for people who have a history of alcohol abuse or perhaps a medical condition. So the point is, you need to find what works for you, what allows you to gain the distance and to recenter yourself, and to sort of not let those voices out there of everything that we need to be doing to sort of get to your head. And the related point to that is that even though many of us are working from home and we're likely to be working from home, obviously many people have lost their jobs, and that's a big tragedy, and hopefully things will start looking up soon. Most of us don't necessarily have any more free time. There's this illusion of more free time, and it's actually challenging to work from home or to work a different job than we had, or to take care of kids or parents and family members. And even if we don't have more objective occupations or things to do, we are dealing with the emotional burden of the crisis, and that takes up emotional space, that takes emotional time. So I would argue that probably for 99% of people out there, if you take a close look, we don't have more time, and we certainly don't have any more mental space. We actually have less. So self-care in many ways is about saying no to things, and it's about coming up with short, quick activities that you can embed in your day. It's not about a 3-hour meditation. It's about a 2-minute cup of coffee, in a way.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, and we're getting some great questions here, and two that I'm going to combine and ask you, Michelle. One is different ways that you have found to keep yourself in the moment, as well as really kind of becoming more aware. So being in the moment and experiencing that awareness. Different thoughts on that.
So those are great questions. I think being in the moment and being present, and we could call it mindful, right? Paying attention with our focus, it is really important. I think that I have to echo what Amelia said about I almost want to say lower our expectations. This is an extraordinarily difficult time. So, when I talk about mindfulness or finding ways to be more present, it's moments. It's not, as Amelia said, a 4-hour meditation. It's moments. So I think one of the most important things to do is to really check in with yourself. We have an inner dialogue that's always going on, right? It's just that we either tap into it or we don't. So it's always there. And often it's very negative. There's a lot of negative self-talk. So I think the first thing is really being present to your inner dialogue. And that really looks like just sort of waking up and just having a moment before you get out of bed and just say, how am I feeling? Where am I today? Where's my energy? Where's my mood? How am I feeling? And paying attention to that is tremendously helpful. It's a moment, but it can inform what you need for the day, right? So if you aren't feeling, people are more tired. People, our burdens, our stress, our emotions are tiring us. I hear people, there's a weariness that I hear. So I think that being kind and patient to yourself, so accept where you are in the moment. And if it's tired, exhausted, or if it's hopeful and grateful, it's okay. And it's okay to be those things in succession. People are all over the place right now, but pay attention, ask yourself how you are, give yourself a moment, and try and do something nice for yourself. Whether it's, again, that cup of coffee, that moment of connection with someone, but think about it from where you are. So really it's tune into your inner voice. And it's as simple as just saying, how am I doing? Where am I at right now?
And really giving yourself a break, right? It seems like we're always so hard on ourselves, and then we enter into this, current pandemic, and we still have that pressure on us. And I think what you're saying really connects with me. Thinking, it's time to say, look, things are not normal. I'm having really, different feelings, and stopping and really and kind of, putting the pause on it and really understanding that.
Well, I think, just to add, I think that one of the things that you really need to do is to think some of the feelings that you're having are uncomfortable feelings, right? They're disappointment, sadness, fear, and those are things we don't often want to feel. We want to flee from those. We want to pretend that we're not having them. We want to numb them, or we feel ashamed. I shouldn't feel like this because other people have it worse, or because so it's really about just allowing yourself to feel what you feel without judgment. And then think, as Amelia said, from there, what would self-care look like for me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. We have another question too. This one is around children, and it's clear children are stressed, and in this case, people may be reluctant to give any type of medication or supplement to a younger child. So what would you recommend actually as far as stress reduction and mitigation in young children? Maybe Amelia start, and Michelle, you can chime in. That'd be great.
Yeah, this again, I think these are very very difficult times. I'm actually thinking, having talking to some colleagues of mine who are experts in parenting, and parenting is hard as it is in general. And now, many of us who are lucky to be working from home have our kids at home, and whether they are 2 or they're 7 or they're 15 or they're in college and came back for also indefinite amount of time, right? Summer, fall, etc. It's really stressful, and it's a big adjustment period. So, there's never a one-size-fits-all with mental health, and let alone with parenting. But I think one of the things that we can all use the most right now, and that would be my starting point, would be to help. Well, there's actually 2 things. They're related, but Number one is to give your children more structure. So whether they are, I have toddlers, so whether it's sort of trying to get them to understand, TV time versus play time, versus eating time, to whether you have a teenager that you're helping structure, the way they're studying for school, or, a college age student who again is having a hard time adjusting to the new routine. I think there's a lot of traction you can get in giving kids more structure, because structure makes things predictable. And when things are predictable, we all feel less anxious. So it's going to make your children feel less anxious. It's going to make you feel less anxious to have some sense of structure. Obviously, there's no point in being rigid, right? Because if you're very rigid about the structure, that backfires. And and there's great value in being collaborative, right? So it's not about you telling them you're doing this and that, but it's not having a conversation. Even with my toddlers, right, I try, arguably not very successfully, to sort of have it be more of a back and forth as to this is play time, this is TV time, this is eating time. So structure, conversation, sort of making it a back and forth can be very helpful, regardless of how old your kid is, right? And then the second piece, and this is more of a style issue, is to really find ways of asking your kids about their emotions and about how they're feeling about this. And let's not assume that everyone is anxious. I mean, many of us are, but even if we are, there's other emotions that are coming to that, right? I'm personally probably more frustrated than anxious, because it's like all the things that I want to do, right? Or we might be angry, or we might be sad, or we might be hopeless, right? So, and again, people talk to their kids about emotions differently, and not everybody talks with the same level of depth, or should, right? I mean, again, people are different, and your relationship with your child better, but to the extent that you do, try to do a little bit more, right? So whatever you are usually on the spectrum of talking to your kids are emotions and how they feel, and sort of opening up and having those conversations, trying to push that a little bit more, just to dig a little bit deeper and try to understand how they're feeling. Because again, it's very easy to assume that we are, that we're all anxious and stressed, but there's a lot more to that than to our experiences right now. And at the very least, your child will feel validated, right? That you're asking, and that you're being curious and coming in with an open mind. And, and this could be a great place for you to then figure out how to be more tactical, right? And okay, if they're angry, I can do this. If they're sad, I can do this, etc., and so on and so forth. So those are the two starting points. But again, I mean, parenting it's a very, very, very complex journey, and it's very hard to say do this and do that. But those two things, I think, are good starting points for probably most people right now.
Michelle, anything to add?
I mean, I obviously would echo Amelia's routine and structure, and it is such a great time to teach children about emotional literacy, to have them understand their emotions and be able to label them. I guess for younger kids, I think specifically with younger children, many of them are very happy that they have a parent or parents home right now. They're kind of thrilled. Not all of them, but I mean, it's not uncommon for your kids at this age, young age, to be really happy to have more time with mom and dad, or their caregivers, their loved ones. So it's also about just us as parents setting a tone, and again, taking good care of ourselves so that we can then be there for them, because they obviously are going to pick up on our emotional states. And so we have more of a responsibility to really be kind to ourselves and take care of ourselves. And again, I say things like, provide a lot of structure, but like maybe, like let go a little bit of your screen time rules and lighten up on some areas and things like that, because this is really a hard time. So we kind of have to take better care of ourselves so we can be there for them. But a lot of them are doing quite well. I think for kids, my concern is often for kids who were struggling prior to this. Kids who were really having a hard time before this happened. And thankfully, therapists are doing an amazing job, telehealth and staying connected virtually. But this is really not the time to miss appointments with therapists. This may be a time to increase those appointments and to just make sure that we're on top of those vulnerabilities that the kids came in with.
Yeah, excellent. We have another question. Sorry, Amelia?
Real quick. Yeah, so I just wanted to chime in real quick, 2 quick points. Absolutely right about kids being happy to be home. I'm like thinking so much of, okay, when is daycare gonna open and kids are gonna go back to daycare, I'm gonna regain my, one full work day. And I don't think they want to go back to daycare anytime soon. They're twins, so they keep themselves entertained quite a bit during the day. So definitely that. And then also, also Michelle, to your point, many kids who are socially anxious or who have all kinds of anxieties about school and interacting with their peers, whether it's, in the school hallways, in the locker room, speaking up in class, this whole like new life that we have where we are sort of behind this like Zoom type environments, in a way allows or facilitates the avoidance of a lot of those situations that usually make kids anxious. So in that sense, they might be feeling better, which again, to Michelle's point, this is maybe a good time then to sort of like do even more work on that underlying anxiety, because when they do go back to school, it might even get more difficult, right? As well. So again, I think it's, I think we could probably come up with like 3 or 4 other exceptions to the rule, right? In a way, so I think that's why, again, communication is key.
Great. I got another question here too that's so relevant. What physical problems can be caused by stress, especially since our normal workouts at the gym cannot happen? Just to kick off this discussion, I've been thinking about since I've seen this question, and I talk a lot about this because what we've found and what research is validated over many years is that the root of a lot of physical as well as mental health problems all are traced back to stress, and this includes acute as well as chronic disease. In fact, there's estimates up to 70% of chronic disease actually starts with the origin being stress, and stress manifesting and wreaking havoc on your body. In fact, there are 3 systems that are really amplified by stress when you have a stress response. And that's the nervous system, the endocrine system, which regulates hormones, as well as your immune system. And as we all know, our topic tonight is on the immune system, and we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And also from an exercise point of view too, definitely, stress can have an impact on physical activity. In this day and age, right now, trying to maintain some level of physical fitness is certainly, a goal to, keep active, and that helps to lessen your stress. This releases kind of counter mediators that decrease the stress response and improve more of the relaxation response that you're looking for. Some of the different physical symptoms or problems that this can lead to long term, if your stress becomes more chronic, there's definitely a higher risk of heart disease, depression, high blood pressure is one, and then a weakened immune system along with stomach issues, and I could go on. So around immune system and why this is so important, what we really know about the immune system is these 3 systems are so integrated and work so closely together. Once you have an acute stress response, and we've all felt it, we all feel it, and most people have heard of the fight or flight response, and this is really your nervous system activating a very primitive built-in early warning system that something might be a threat to you. And this could be physical, it could be thoughts that you're having that can trigger this. And so your body reacts to protect you in a protective way. It's almost like why we have a pain response, something's wrong. And so it puts the body on alert, it activates your endocrine system as well as your immune system. And in the beginning, it's actually protective. But over a period of time, if that stressor isn't removed, what happens is then all that good that happened starts to turn into not so good, where you start to see an increase in inflammation, as well as a number of other changes that lead to a lot of the different conditions I mentioned, but more importantly, around the immune system and your ability of your immune system to fight off infection, where it becomes counter to fighting, it's building up the inflammation, which is decreasing a lot of the different ways in which it will help with different infections, as well as other threats to the body. In fact, interestingly, studies have been done, and this is why we haven't talked about it yet, but we will, about sleep and why sleep is so important. During the night, that is the time when your body is really doing a lot of maintenance while you sleep. And if I were to say one thing tonight, what can you do for your immune system? It is to get a good night's sleep. 7 to 9 hours of sleep is consistently what the experts believe is the time that it takes really to have the process play through. And there's been studies done where they've looked at folks who they'll have one group where they are sleep deprived, and they have another group who sleep 7 to 9 hours a night. And in this one particular study, what they did is actually inserted a rhinovirus into their nasal passage. This is a very weak and kind of cold virus. And they wanted to check to see who caught the cold and who didn't. And not surprisingly, 50% of those that slept 5 hours or less a night actually got that cold, whereas those that slept 7 or more hours a night, only 18% of those caught a cold. So you can see just merely the only thing different was the amount of sleep. Another one, just in one night, there are things that are called natural killer cells. And these are basically your army of defense. And these natural killer cells go out and seek to destroy foreign invaders. And during the night, these are when these are replenished, along with a myriad of other immune cells. And in this study, it was really a landmark kind of aha study where it was shown just in a single night where people who were sleep deprived, who got 4 hours sleep versus those that were getting 8 hours sleep, they saw a reduction in the production of their natural killer cells of 50% up to 70% reduction in one night of sleep. So you can imagine if we're only sleeping 4 hours a night and we're stressed out, what is that doing to our immune system? And that's where, I take it back to sleep being so important. And one final one study that they did looking at the effectiveness of people who are being vaccinated, where people who are getting less than 6 hours of sleep per night on average were far less likely than longer sleepers to show adequate antibody responses or production from that vaccine. So even your ability to have a nice robust response for a vaccine for protection is affected by sleep as well. So another reason why, especially, again, this is so relevant today as to what's going on how important it is, for that good night's sleep to really ramp up and do the best you can for your immune system. And perhaps I can open it up to Amelia and Michelle on some ideas or thoughts on how people can get ready for a good night's sleep and really take care of themselves through that. Michelle, do you want to start, perhaps?
Thank you for that. It was really very interesting about those studies. I think that there's several, the problem now is that people are really struggling to sleep, to fall asleep and to stay asleep. And that's an understandable symptom that happens when we're going through stress. So there are several things that you can do to help yourself fall asleep. Be really careful about what you're doing an hour prior. So you want to avoid, again, screens. You certainly want to avoid the news or distressing material. I really like progressive muscle relaxation scripts and exercises to do prior to bed. They're, very easy to find, really great to listen to. If you are stressed, some people have that sensation of, I can't turn my mind off. So jotting down what's on your mind, making a list, sort of getting it from your mind onto paper. It's understandable that that people are struggling with this. The other thing I'm hearing about sleep is more vivid dreams, or I should say people are remembering their dreams more right now. And that also makes sense if we think about dreams as the part of our mind that really carries a lot of these thoughts, worries, beliefs, ideas that maybe we're not consciously aware of all the time. They emerge while we sleep. So people are remembering their dreams more. And I actually think that's really beneficial, although it can be distressing to folks. You also want to think about dreams as related to also, especially for folks working as on the front line, as dreams as trauma. So, and you always want to think about that PTSD symptom of sort of re-experiencing trauma in nightmares. So just a couple of things to keep in mind, but really thinking about what you can do at least an hour before to prepare yourself for a night's sleep is helpful.
Mm-hmm. Amelia, anything to add?
I mean, that's very good. I agree with all of that. I think there's a million things, to think about in terms of sleep. So from as a CBT therapist, when we do CBT treatments or CBT approaches for sleep difficulties, particularly insomnia, there's literally like this really like long set of tools that we try with our clients, and we iterate, week after week until we find which are the ones that tend to work the best. Because sleep, as you guys were mentioning, is like such a complex process. That it's sort of, again, it's a very complex physiological process. It's very much affected by stress. It's also very much affected by the constraints of our lives, right? Like, do we need to wake up early to go to a job, to send our kids to work? Do we work the night shift somewhere, right? So there's a lot of external constraints on it, in addition to stress. So there's a lot of stuff, but I think what is the most helpful, one strategy that I keep coming back to, is for people who have a difficult time falling asleep and are tossing and turning in bed, sort of worrying about, the next day and the next week and the next month and the next year, and sort of how their mind's going. There's a few things to do. So when you're not sort of able to fall asleep right away, sometimes it can be helpful to create what's called sleep pressure. So basically, say that you're trying to go to bed at 10 and then you're tossing and turning until midnight. Maybe try to stay awake, like purposefully awake until say 11:30 or even close to midnight, to sort of build that sleep pressure, which is another term for getting tired. So by the time that you hit the bed, it actually becomes easier to fall asleep. And then over time, you sort of begin to move the time earlier and earlier, right? So that you can eventually make sure that you get a nice amount of hours of sleep. And again, that's very paradoxical, right? Because if you want to sleep more, the advice would be go to bed early. But sometimes, and again, it's not for every person and it's not, every single time, but it's a strategy that tends to be pretty robust. In this case, it's sort of doing the opposite. It can actually have the intended effect. And the other thing is to be very purposeful about your sleeping space. And this is a constraint that many of us are facing right now, because we are in, the homes of our relatives. Maybe we have a bunch of roommates in the house, who are sort of here all the time. And we tend to use our bedrooms as our office spaces. And that's actually a big issue, because from a cognitive behavioral perspective, we begin to associate work and stress with bed. right? So then when it also blends that differentiation between working and being awake and not working and being relaxed and falling asleep. So there's a blending of that. And I think in general, we've all been talking a lot recently about blending, like our work schedule, our family lives are blending together, days, weeks, weekdays, weekends, right? But in the sleep literature, this is something, in sleep treatments, this is something that we've been talking about for quite some time. So to the best that you can, don't work in bed. So if you must stay in your bedroom because your roommate is really loud in the living room and they're taking calls, sit on the floor, sit on a chair, right? Sit somewhere else. Maybe you can go outside. Maybe there's like a patio outside of your building. Again, wearing a mask, practicing social distancing, right? But do anything but working in bed, and ideally anything but working in the bedroom. Because again, that begins to create this association of stress with bed that ultimately is also going to make it more and more difficult to relax and to sleep. So again, those are my two sort of places to begin with sleep, and particularly for people who have a difficult time falling asleep. And to Michelle's point about the nightmares, I've noticed that as well in my clients and my friends, that people are either having more stressful dreams or noticing them more. Again, with sleep science is so complex that we can't really know, actually, at least not at this point. What I would recommend to that is, you can't really control, right, what dreams you have or whether you remember them. But you can control a few things. You can control your stress level before going to bed. You can control your relaxation routines before bed. And you can also control how you respond to the nightmares. Sometimes accepting the fact that we're going through a difficult time and that we are going to have nightmares and that we are going to have stressful dreams, versus sort of getting hung up on that and feeling sort of being hard on ourselves and sort of judging ourselves for having those experiences, that tends to make it a lot worse, right? So sort of being gentle with ourselves, even when we are doing and feeling things that we don't want to. And knowing, sort of bringing, again, the sense of the first comment that I mentioned today, which is we are going through a lot. So we need to find ways of giving ourselves more of an emotional buffer.
Cool. I'm going to try to put this slide up. Hopefully it works. Hopefully everyone can see this. This is exactly what you're talking about, and this really speaks to sleep hygiene, as they call it. Light, noise, heat. Having it cooler in the bedroom, I've heard too, really helps as our core temperature actually decreases at night when a lot of that maintenance is going on. And unfortunately, for many out there, alcohol and caffeine has a big impact. In fact, caffeine, you mentioned sleep pressure, and sleep pressure, which is regulated by a chemical called adenosine, is really affected by caffeine. And the effects of caffeine can last many hours beyond what you initially think. So really limiting these different activities, and then what can help. Earlier we mentioned exercise, a consistent sleep schedule too, which I've seen very often as something even through the weekend. And no screens at night. And then there are different supplements that can help as well. But really, it's around managing, preparation for sleep, and just getting into that mindset of sleep, and really taking advantage right now of being able to sleep 7 to 9 hours. And not feel guilty about it, and realize what you're doing is you're probably doing, again, one of the best things you can do to protect yourself right now is to build that healthy immune system. So I just wanted to share that brief little slide there. The other question we had too, diet, obviously, as I mentioned, diet is important as well. I'm guilty myself of falling into that COVID diet lately, where people are reaching for comfort foods that make you feel good in the moment, but in the long term, that that shouldn't be really a strategy. But again, like Michelle said earlier, you got to give yourself a break, right? I mean, these are tough times, and yeah, you reach for some ice cream or, you know, something else, some nachos, whatever it is, you know, as long as you're not doing it every night and that becomes your new normal, then you're okay. It's okay to do those things and let yourself have that, you know, that leeway to do that. We had another question too here. This one actually for you, Michelle. Do breathing exercises help in the middle of the night if you wake up? So if you're really having trouble falling asleep, which we know, you know, a lot of people I'm sure are, and staying asleep, would it be something that you would recommend that could be helpful?
Absolutely. So when you wake up in the middle of the night, so say you were able to fall asleep, but you are now up in the middle of the night, and one of the first things that happens in these scenarios is that you have anxiety that you're not going to be able to fall back asleep. You start calculating how many hours you have if you slept now versus in an hour. So of course you start to feel a tremendous amount of anxiety about missing sleep. So breathing exercises are great. The progressive muscle relaxation scripts are great. Anything that can take your mind off of the tension and the worry, I'm not going to be able to sleep, and then what does that mean for the rest of my night, for tomorrow, for my immune system? So it's great that we have all this information, but we often get stressed about not sleeping in the middle of the night. And I always tell people that if you can relax your body, you're still getting the benefits of relaxation. You might not be getting the full benefits of sleep, but you are getting benefits of relaxation, and that's really important too. And that leads to feeling better the next day, and that has a lot of health benefits. So absolutely doing that in the middle of the night, if you can't sleep, is a very good idea. Anything to take your mind off of the anxiety of not sleeping.
Yep. Yep. And Amelia, would you, if people are having trouble falling asleep, instead of tossing and turning all night, should they be getting up and like moving to another room, maybe reading a book or whatever to kind of break that cycle and then go back to sleep? I mean, what would you recommend?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's exactly like the first strategy to try, instead of kind of tossing and turning and fighting. Because many times what happens is like people think they're actually awake, but they're not. It's like that, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this. Like some more than others, but like it's like that awful state when you're sort of awake and sort of asleep, and you're having all this like worrisome thoughts and and you feel awake and you feel asleep. So when you're in those moments, those are like the toss and turn moments where you might end up losing a huge chunk of the evening. To the best that you can, sort of getting up, fully waking yourself up, and then trying to come back to bed. And of course, being really careful about what activities you do while you get up, right? So getting folding laundry, doing like a quick chore, unloading the dishwasher, getting water, something that is physical so that you're truly awake, but also something that is not going to be very demanding, and also something that is not going to be very cognitively engaging, right? Because you sort of want to be awake enough, but also you don't want to all of a sudden be like, go, 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 go. Obviously, don't grab the phone, don't check the news or social media or anything, right? I mean, nothing ever good came out of like scrolling for things at 3 in the morning, right? So save that for the morning. There's plenty of time to catch up with the news and social media and your friends and everyone. But yeah, sort of doing things that are very, very brief, but also that bring you that state of full awareness, basically, so that your brain is fully awake, but not extremely engaged.
Yeah, oh, that's excellent. And a follow-up to that would be, a lot of people think, all right, I didn't sleep well, the last 2 nights, but you know what? The weekend's coming, I'll catch up on sleep.
Yeah.
And so, what are your thoughts, both of you, on, whether or not that's even possible? And if, let's say it's not, are there things you could do that may help, whether it's a nap or meditation, something like that?
I mean, I think in general, again, sort of back to the point that sleep is very different and it's very different for everybody, right? Some of us can get by with 5-6 hours and do really well. Some of us need 10 or 12 hours. So, the whole catching up, it's sort of like a bit of a complex math to be done in your head that for some people may work. If you spend several nights not sleeping well, then having a night or two of binge sleep. For other people, it doesn't. And again, it comes back to like a lot of the idiosyncrasies of sleep. What I would say to that is just like do what feels natural for your body. So if you feel like you need, that extra few hours on the weekend or some other day of the week or that extra nap, so sort of, follow what your body's asking you in a way. And also I would say just like, trying to stay away from that mental map can be helpful. I think it can be for most of us stressful to be like, oh my gosh, I slept 5 hours today and 4. That means that tomorrow I need to sleep whatever many hours so that I bring my average to whatever. And it kind of gets a little tricky, I think it's like, I don't know if this is like the best analogy, so maybe somebody can come up with a better one, but it's almost like the idea of how much water you should be drinking every day. There's like some guideline, there's a range of number of ounces that we should be drinking, but ultimately it's about how thirsty you feel, right? And it's about how much you're sweating, and it's about how much you sort of are needing that water. So, if one day you drink less water, you wouldn't go into the next day and be like, okay, today I need to drink like 3 more ounces of water because yesterday I didn't drink enough, right? We're pretty good, most of us, like regulating how much water we take. We listen to our body. Again, sometimes we mess up and we don't hydrate very well. Sometimes we overhydrate, but in general, we tend to sort of pay attention to those cues. So sometimes I like to think about it that way, see if you can relate to your sleep in the same way that you relate to your thirst, so that you're not putting all this extra pressure. Because imagine if you were sort of like measuring ounce by ounce, compensating from one day to the other one. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense, right? But we do it with sleep, and I don't think it is ultimately, I think for most of us that ends up being a source of extra anxiety than any sort of like useful, way of sort of getting more rest.
Cool. Michelle?
I agree. I think the whole trying to catch up, it's a terrible race that you go to, and I think when people nap too much during the day, then they can't sleep well at night. So it just ends up becoming, you're sort of chasing sleep. I know that teenagers sort of often follow this catching up on weekends thing, and I think in some ways that makes more sense to me. But I think when people are struggling with insomnia and just sleeplessness in general due to stress, it's better to just try and prepare in the ways that we're saying for a good night's sleep than trying to do the calculations to try and find a way to sort of feed that sleep bank. I don't think it's as effective.
Yeah, that's neat. You mentioned students, and the question came in too. This is the time of the year when finals are just around the corner, and so they're ramping up, and certainly there's a certain element of stress that's involved there that helps to motivate them to study. What would you suggest for students going into final exams? Maybe Michelle, do you want to take that?
Sure. So, well, I mean, I think students are having a variety of struggles right now, just given that they're getting used to the online learning and that it looks so different depending on what your district is doing. So if we're thinking about college students who are often used to online classes or hybrid classes, whether professors are actually giving exams or whether they're alternate assignments. But of course, there's stress regardless of any of that, figuring out the end of the semester grades. And so I think that there's a sort of sweet spot for stress. There's this ideal place where I used to tell my students that I want you to be stressed enough to study. I want you to care about this test, but I don't want you to be so stressed that it interferes with your ability to recall, your cognitive awareness and memory. So you want them to care enough, but you don't want it to be an interference. So they have to know themselves. And I think for me, anxiety about tests has a lot to do with procrastination too. And sort of putting off things and sort of, again, binge studying the night before, really bad idea. So there's a lot of anxiety leading up to exams, and negative self-talk that I would always tell students to be aware of. I used to have students that would tell me on the first day of class that they don't test well.
Mm.
You know, and I'm like, you don't know you don't know how I test. You don't know how so I think that you have to be really aware of yourself as a test taker. So I think that's important. But hopefully, people are working together because this is a difficult time. So students are doing a variety of things and adapting to a new learning environment. So hopefully, people are working together to sort of make that work.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. So we're coming down to about 2 minutes left, and we have a lot of questions that we're probably not going to get to, but we will follow up on those questions. I think one of the last things I just wanted to share here was about stress and is stress good or bad? Is all stress good or bad? And this illustration here, I thought really really illustrated it well. Where if you have no stress at all, and us with children can probably relate to being very bored and not motivated. On the other hand, you go on to the other side of the curve here where stress really can become an issue. And, as they call it here, that real sweet spot, stress helps to motivate. Stress isn't all bad, right? And it's really that education that we're all trying to provide to really help people understand how they can harness this stress and use it in a good way. I thought this may have been appropriate. It is a curve. In this case, we want to be on the left side of the curve when it comes to stress versus COVID, where we want to be, flat and way to the right at that point. And hopefully that reverses our stress. So what I'd like to do first is thank both of you. This is a very engaging conversation. We did record this event, and we will be posting it on our website, which is www.r3set, or reset, but r3set.com, as well as on our YouTube channel. Next week, we will also be hosting another webinar, and there we'll be talking more about I think, Michelle, you talked just briefly about it, but really about how this is affecting the different generations, whether it's children and whether it's older adults, the sandwich generation, which many of us can relate to, who are taking care of not only our parents, but also children. And in some cases, all of them are in the same house and, being cooped up, how do you deal with that? And just one last parting thought, maybe you can just give 30 seconds, Amelia and Michelle, on some advice as people are now getting ready to re-enter society at some point. How should they approach that?
Oh, that's a tough question for 30 seconds. Yeah, we could do a whole webinar on it, actually.
Yes. In fact, we are week 4, but I just thought a question came in and I thought it's relevant. We can leave it.
Yeah, no, it is. We I'd love to talk more about it, but I think the biggest thing is we all need to make sure that we budget for that emotion. It's going to be an emotional shock in all kinds of different ways as we go back to whatever things we go back in, whichever ways they look like, whatever our neighborhoods look like. If we left our towns, when we come back, and everything is going to look different. Everything is going to be different, but at the same time, a lot is going to be the same. And I think that the human mind has a difficult time with things that are shades of gray, with things that are in between. We like black and white. And it would be great to say everything is going to be the same, and it's not. And it would also be great to say everything is going to be different, because it's also not the case. So we're going to be living in that in-between gray zone for a while. It's going to look different from all of us. And I think sort of bringing that awareness into that, and sort of finding ways of creating more breathing space for ourselves, more space to have those reactions, to have those emotions, to have those WTF moments that we are going to have, and not try to fight them, not try to solve for all of that ahead of time, knowing that it will likely happen, instead of creating that space and that sense of gentleness and self-compassion, which will look different for all of us in different ways. But I think sort of bringing that intentionality to our experience, again, as we go back, that's going to be key.
Great. And you, Michelle, wrap it up for us. Take it home.
Sure. Amelia, so beautifully said. I think I would just say, go slow. We don't know what it's going to look like. And we're going to have anxiety about starting. We're going to have anxiety about changing from this, even though we're having anxiety with this. So it's just go slow. It's a great topic, and something I think I'm glad that you all will be talking more about it, because it's really important.
Great. Well, thank you both very much. And like I said, next week we'll have a new topic. And also, thank you again. You can follow Amelia, who does some great webinars too, as well as posting on YouTube some 2-minute nice little presentations. And you can follow her at Dr. Amelia Aldao and at Together CBT as well. And Michelle, how can they find you?
Well, I'm on the Reset blog quite a bit, so I've posted a lot there. So I think that's probably for now the easiest place to find what I've done recently.
Great. And for the questions that we weren't able to get to tonight, I'll work with Amelia and Michelle, and we'll post those answers on our website, and we'll let folks know that they're out there. So again, with that, thank you, and everybody else out there. I wish you the best. Stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thanks for joining us.